got 6. You good? Good evening. It's now 6 o'clock, and the February 17th meeting of the Dublin Santa Monica Services District Board of Directors is called to order. Let's go to item 2, pledge the flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Nicole, roll call, please.
Director Goel,
Present.
Director Duarte,
Here.
Director Von Heater Leopold,
Here.
Vice President Govindarao,
Here.
President Halkett.
I'm present. Okay, item 4, special announcements and activities.
No special announcements.
Wow, good answer. Item 5, public comment. Meeting's open to the public. I have no blue cards. Anything, Nicole, I need to be worried about here?
No speaker cards.
All righty. Item 6, agenda management. Looks pretty clean.
No recommended changes.
All right. Item 7, consent calendar. These items are typically taken as a whole because they're non-controversial. If anyone wants to pull anything for discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to just pull 7C if we could for discussion, and just get some clarification.
Got it. Excellent. I will entertain a motion then for 7A and B.
I'll move approval of 7A and B.
I'll second.
Excellent. Before I call the vote, I do want to commend the finance team on 7B. The new formats are really nice for the finance reports, easy to follow.
Yep.
Looks like we're doing a good shape, so well done. Thank you. All right, I have a motion and a second for A and B. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 5-0. 7C, let's ask some questions.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
I got the floor. Great. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for putting that together. Just a couple of questions regarding 7C. So when we talk about what I just want to understand a little bit more is the potential future fiscal impact I know there's not, from what I read, there's nothing that should be affected in 26, 27. But have we looked at, after retirement, what those projected impacts could look like, and what that may, what we may have to face down the road? So that's one thing. And then the second thing is, if we remove this option, what impact would that have in the future?
Director Director Govindaro, to respond to your questions, your first question was regarding future cost impacts to this decision. It would be factored into an analysis actuarial that is done on a frequency for the program itself for OPEB liabilities. So to add another person to the program, there would be incremental cost, but to know that now would be unknown because we, number one, don't know when that person might retire and what benefit level they would be at when they retired. And that analysis is not something we can do now. It's something that happens in the future. So it's difficult to assess the actual cost.
But we could put some projections in place, correct? Like assuming some different putting some variables into place and looking at that and saying, this is potentially the impact if these were the scenarios. So trying to run through those various options that could potentially happen.
I don't know that. I haven't been a part of the OPEB analysis process. Ken, I don't know if you've been a part of this in terms of.
May I interrupt for a quick sec? And maybe it's just about a point of interpretation here.
Sure.
I think this is about interpretation of an existing plan and then just postponing a choice that we made previously. That's my understanding of it, and maybe I could seek some clarity there.
Correct. So this is related to the timing of the recruitment for the finance director. which was initiated last October.
Right.
And when we advertised for that position, it included the current or the retirement plan that's available to the current senior managers in it. Subsequently, the board took an action to change that retiree medical plan. And what this is doing is asking the board to consider pushing back the start date to June 1st to allow the recruitment to be completed under the plan that was advertised for when it went out.
Okay, no, and I totally understand that. I appreciate you commenting on that. I think what I'd also like to see is, I'm supportive of doing this. I guess what I'd like to see is, as we try to entice strong management to come here down the road, when folks retire, to be able to have various incentives for them. So I want, hopefully we'll lay those things out, what that would look like, and what the impacts could be for us. So I think that's something I'd like to see, those projections and those things laid out. But I'm fully supportive of pushing it back. But I want to make sure for the record that we're going to do that analysis and we're going to look into it.
We can provide that information. So the OPEB reports, they come out every 2 years and they always lag by a year. So the last OPEB report was done in 2024 and the next report will actually be done this year. And we usually take both OPEB and the CalPERS pension actuarial reports and we provide them and share them with the board. So we will be doing that at probably maybe more toward the end of 2026 or early 2027 is usually when we take it to the board. And we can have some further conversations on your question at that time.
And that'll be brought back to the board.
Correct.
This year.
So,
Okay.
so I would assume that the two positions that we're recruiting for were budgeted using tier 2.
Correct.
So there's no budget impact, at least for the short term.
Right.
I think I'm hearing what your concern is, that if we move to a tier 3 at some point, we might have trouble recruiting for this level of management. But we can always bake in different compensation. Because it'll be a known at that point, we can bake in the proper compensation to put somebody at tier 3 and still be desirable.
Correct.
All right. And hopefully we never lose senior managers again, so this is a moot point, but when we turn over a few more, we'll have to look at that pretty carefully and make sure that we're still competitive out there, even with the tier 3.
Correct.
If I may?
Yep.
I guess, Director, my question to you, and I'm trying to maybe understand where you're going and what you're trying to do. So we took an action, I guess, that kind of created this situation. And subsequent to that, there was an impact on a recruitment, right? What it was posted at versus what it's going to potentially come in at. And you're wanting an analysis, and I'm trying to understand when the actual item was reviewed by this board and approved by this board. At that time, was your lens different, or what are you kind of seeking clarity on? And what are you seeking clarity to have staff provide on an actuarial review that was not previously available when that other action was taken? And are you intending by that to then revisit that prior action?
No, that's a great question. And I'm not looking to revisit it. What I'm looking to do is get some clarification from the previous discussions that we may have had on it. So if that may have been overlooked on my part at that point. So I'm trying to get some clarification. What I would like to see, and it's to President Halkett's point, is I'd like to see for us to also look at how we can potentially make sure that we're bringing in good management and being able to incentivize them. So taking away certain things could potentially compromise that down the road. So that's why those are some things I'd like us to make sure we look at and not lose sight of. So that's moving the date is I don't really have an issue with that. But what I want to make sure is we don't just stop there and we actually look at this a little bit more carefully down the road.
Noted.
But I guess I'm still not clear. Are you expecting staff to come back with a new presentation to
No,
revisit?
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, what I'd like to do is, and as I mentioned earlier, I said I'd like to have this done, at some point so we don't lose sight of it. So I think what I heard is we'll be getting a presentation at the end of this year,
Mhm.
or if I recall, if this is that what you? I don't want to put words
I
in your
think
mouth.
there's two different questions being raised here. One is a sort of a fiscal impact of tier two versus tier three, and that will over time be reflected in the actuarial reports. It's similar to PEPRA. It takes time for these changes to run through the actuarials. The other question is related to compensation for senior managers, and that too will be evaluated in the future.
Because we don't have to go to tier three if we don't want to, correct? I mean, we could always change that directive if we, in the future, or am I mistaken there?
That's correct. The board always has the
Okay,
authority.
that's great. Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Do you have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
Yeah, motion in 2 seconds. I already have the vote. This is nice.
I heard.
Yeah. She's closer to you, so sound travels. Yeah. All right, I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, it passes 5-0. All righty. 8A. Receive a brief presentation on new laws and legislative affairs activities. No action, just listening here.
Did you see brief in there?
Good evening to the board. So I'm going to present the first part of the first portion of the presentation. This is the new laws piece. I believe you all have this every year. So we try to curate the new laws that we think would be of most interest and most applicable to you. Sorry, go ahead.
I think we just rolled right over the general manager's introduction. So,
Or I will actually defer to general counsel to introduce his associate here, and then we will dive right in.
as the board may already now be aware, we brought in a special presenter for this brief presentation on new laws that are in effect here in 2026. It's Morgan Biggerstaff. Some of you may recognize. Morgan worked with me at my prior law firm, joined us at BKS a couple of years ago. He is of counsel with the firm and working with all the firm's major clients. I brought him down here. You may have recalled we brought in some younger associates the last couple of years, but Morgan's going to be doing a lot of work with DSRSD in the future as I'm going to term it here just for practical purposes as my primary backup. So you'll see him periodically in this chair and other chairs in the room, I would imagine. And we do have a hopefully pretty brief presentation. I think we've got a gauntlet set for that. So I will let him get back into the presentation, but I do want to recognize that there is a staff presentation that will follow from his. And with that.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. I was just so excited to get to these slides with you all.
Go.
Yeah. Well, and we're going to lead off with everyone's favorite topic, Brown Act updates. I'm sure you all would like to know about that. So I'll start by saying SB 707 had a whole slew of changes, some of which are not applicable to the district, some of which are just rearranging, revisiting certain items. But I thought I'd start out by telling you about some of the new ones and then some of the ones that were extended. So to begin with, bullet number 1 here, we have the presiding member may remove or limit participation of a virtual participant. That person actually disrupts, disturbs, impedes, or renders infeasible. This is essentially the remote version of what you may already be able to do with in-person interruptions. Reminder on this point, you got to give them a warning before you boot them. So you would want to, give this person a chance to collect themselves and present accordingly. But it does allow you all to deal with, some of the problems that occurred during remote participation during COVID. You may have heard of Zoom bombing, things of that nature. So that's number 1. The next one is, again, kind of an extension of an existing rule. You already had the rule in place for the district manager you would typically have to announce their compensation, verbally summarize it as a recommendation during the meeting. This will now apply to other senior management, so something equivalent to department heads. So again, just a quick one for you. The next one is this kind of streamlining approach to items that have been considered at the committee level, and you may skip the public comment for these items when you're full board, with the provision that there must be no substantial change to the item since the committee considered it. The prior committee meeting must have had a physical in-person quorum, and the committee must not have primary jurisdiction over sensitive or high interest areas such as I used election and budgets because those are two of the big ones that you would think about. Number 4 here on this sheet is must provide a copy of the Brown Act to any person elected or appointed. Now, the old rule was suggestive. It said you could. We encourage you to do it. Now it's a requirement. So, moving on. I'll stop right there. Does anyone have any questions on these 4 bullets? So I suspect that you may have questions on the next set. Another thing that SB 707 did was extend the use of internet-based social media platforms. I used Facebook as an example, but it could be any broadly used app that's open and visible to the public. So here's the rule, basically. An individual board member may engage with the public on their page, correct? And others can view that. What the rule says is another board member may not comment on the first board member's post. So it could be and it's got to be within the subject matter of the district. So just to give you an example of maybe 2 things, one would be okay, one would not. Hey, I'm going up to Tahoe for the weekend, and one director likes it, thumbs it up, right? Another example would be someone says, hey, we're going to be looking at this new project, can't wait for it to get done. The director thumbs that up. The first one would be okay. The second one would not be okay under the Brown Act rules. And just to make clear, this was an existing rule for the last 4 or 5 years. What they've done now is they've extended that rule indefinitely. So that's the rule in place. And I thought I'd kind of just cut to the chase on it with an example so that y'all could kind of think through. There's, of course, hypotheticals that we could answer. If you had individual questions, we could take that, by email or you could talk to staff about it, and we can work it that way. But I just wanted to kind of give you a general sense of the rule that has been in place and will be in place going forward. So I would say with that, does anyone have any questions on that first point?
Sounds like with that kind of a limitation, you're safer to not comment at all.
Well, that's fair. Doug, did you want to add something?
I do, and Director Duarte, that is exactly the advice that many a city attorney has provided to their clients, is to simply don't use social media. I would not go that far myself, but I will, extend a very high level of caution when using that to avoid, inadvertently creating issues for yourselves by following each other too closely. We'll put it that way. Particularly, and I don't think this is a board that has used social media frequently for purposes related to the district. So I don't have a huge concern about it, but it is something to be cautious that if you do at some point engage in that kind of conversation, that you're very aware of who else is within that chain of communication, so that you're aware that if you happen to be on one, you look and there's Director Goel, you want to make sure that you recognize that he is in that same group.
Any other questions? All right. Let's forge ahead.
Okay. Moving on to the next part. So this, what I have here, extends just cause basis for remote legislative body meeting participation. Again, this is a rule that was in place. They've clarified it a little bit. There used to be 2 categories. There was a set of just cause and then a set of emergency circumstances. They've kind of merged them together. Um, I've got an example you could think of is if someone's sick in the household and you need to take care of them, or your spouse has surgery and you need to stay home with them. You could participate remotely up to 5 times over the course of a calendar year, and that is based on how often you have board meetings. So because you have 2 per month, you can have 5 within a calendar year. If you only had 1 per month, you would only be able to do it twice a year. I didn't put that on here because you don't have to worry about that. And just a point on must notify the board at the earliest opportunity. The idea is that it does allow for some flexibility. Obviously, advanced warning is best, but sometimes things come up. And so this can even happen at the outset of a meeting. A person who needs to participate remotely can actually notify and do it in the moment and say, I'm not going to be able to attend. Here's why. And it has to fall within one of the reasons that are provided for, which we can give you the list if you want us to. I just wanted to talk about this broadly. And again, I'll stop here in case anyone has any specific questions.
So that rule of 72 hours and posting that notice in front of your door, does that go away or?
So it does in the limited circumstances that are provided for under this particular part of the statute. So if you have one of these circumstances for just cause, you could quite literally call in the night of the meeting. The board would have to add things onto the agenda, act on those. It's not a. I've had to do it a number of times with other clients. It's a little, I won't say complicated, but there's some procedural steps. But the upshot is that those teleconference rules, or I call the traditional teleconference rules, don't apply. So that's exactly it. You wouldn't have the agenda on the door, any of those type of things. You would have to have a audio-visual two-way recording. You would have to be on camera unless there was a reason why, because of what's keeping you out, that being on camera wouldn't work. And there are a couple of other things that you have to do announcement-wise to utilize this particular exemption. I did want to note that there is, through case law, there is another exception to those traditional teleconferencing rules, and that is for disability. The Brown Act is now directly needs to itself comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So if there is a medical disability that prevents someone from coming in, that is what I'm going to call is the type of disability that would be covered under the ADA. So it wouldn't be because you have the flu, for example. It would be something more significant than that. You can have board members participating remotely under relaxed guidelines, under that rubric as well. That kind of fits in here, but they don't have it in the statute.
So not applicable would be obviously the non-just cause, like a vacation. Right. Just clarity.
And that'd be the old rules. Give you notice, has to be on the
you can still absolutely participate from a vacation, but it will have to be under those traditional rules.
Which is the ones you were citing too, where you have to post
hang the agenda on your cabin door.
Allow someone to come into your hotel room.
Has to appear on the agenda.
All right. Okay. Any other questions on that bullet?
Okay.
All right. Let's forge ahead.
Okay, so this is another one you all would be interested in. Expanded training for local agency officials. You already had an ethics training requirement at the outset, and then every 2 years thereafter. A couple new parts to this. Number one is department heads and similar administrative officers must now receive the ethics training. And then in addition, now there is this fiscal and financial training piece that is different than the ethics training. And as you can see in this sub-bullet, the officials in office as of January 1 have a little bit of time to comply, but people who are just coming in, like say at the end of the year, if there are new board members taking seat after 2026 election year, things of that nature, they would have to do it within 6 months. So there's a little bit difference in time frame between if you're already a seated member. Um, and again, fiscal and financial training. I didn't provide a lot of detail on that, but it's things like conflicts of interest, and also just fiduciary duty and how to handle finances, things of that nature. That's new. And the last part here, by July 1 of this year, you must post instructions and contact information on a website explaining how the public may request those training records, basically just for transparency purposes. So with that, I will pause if anyone has any questions about that. Okay. Another one. So this is, again, just a slight adjustment of an existing rule. As you know, Form 700s that have to be filed, statements of economic interest. Traditionally, the high-level officers would file with their agency. Now they're going to be filing directly with the FPPC, who's going to be keeping track of that list. So not a huge difference, but something to take note of, and it is a change in the law. And it says, last bullet here, staff who work under the supervision of the principal investment officer, they would remain local agency filers. And I know you all have over the past few years adjusted kind of the different structure of your organization. So we can get into that nitty gritty if and when we need to. So I'm assuming nobody has any questions about this one. Okay. Okay, so SB 31. Make sure I didn't skip one. Yeah, okay. SB 31, relaxed rules governing recycled water use. So this is a set of changes. May not be super applicable to you because I think you all have already been so far ahead of the curve with using recycled water and are in good position, but still worth noting. It relaxed the plumbing requirements with regard to outdoor landscape irrigation. So think like medians, things where the laterals are not crossing into someone's private boundary. They're not treated as a dual plumb system, and all that comes with, things like, backflow, cross flow prevention, cross connection prevention, things of that nature. So the idea is to allow a little bit more use of recycled water, at least with regards to the common areas in a development. The next one, as regards parks and open spaces, the rules have changed to allow incidental amounts of spray or runoff to enter the outdoor eating areas. And again, this really just comes from this set of regulations hasn't changed a lot in the past couple of decades. So this was an attempt to kind of recognize where things are with regard to use of recycled water in different places and how it can be managed appropriately. Number 3 here, golf course ponds, decorative lakes as an example. The rule says if you discharge over 50,000 gallons, you would have to report as an unauthorized discharge. This makes it a provision for if you have it during storm events such as the weather we're having right now, you would not have to meet that reporting requirement. So it's a tiny little carve out to the rule. And then the last one here, food handling and processing facilities. You may use recycled water at these facilities for toilet flushing, outdoor irrigation. I have here, as long as the recycled water doesn't freely enter a room. What do I mean by that? I mean, it's got to be in a pipe. It can travel through the room to get to the next place. So I'll take another quick pause, make sure nobody has any questions about this.
Just a quick thing. So when you were talking about the golf course ponds, and you mentioned number 50,000 gallons, is that over a certain period of time, or is that, what is that time frame for that?
I don't recall a specific time frame. I think it's usually just treated as
so when you hit that number,
if
okay.
if you cross it.
Got it.
And it's usually, I mentioned nearby creek here in the slide. That's usually how the circumstances under which it would occur, some sort of drainage that it would end up flowing into, and you could have water quality issues related to that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And we can bring back a little bit more specificity to that too, whether that's an aggregate 50,000 or 50,000 events. I believe it's more the former than the latter, but we can provide that information to the general manager and can pass it along to the board.
Thank you.
And although I would say, and I'm looking at staff, I don't believe any of our golf courses have a decorative lake or feature that this would apply to.
Any of those?
But we can certainly clarify the requirement if you would like.
None? Okay, alternative procurement for recycled water projects. I'll just start out by saying this is a rule that was already in place in the code for Metropolitan Water District that allowed them to build certain projects using an alternative method. And I guess they've decided, you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so they're trying to make this a rule that's more broadly applicable to other agencies. And so what it says here, a local agency may use the construction manager general contractor method for a regional recycled water project or other water infrastructure project to alleviate supply shortages attributable to drought or climate change. So a couple things in that first paragraph. This would obviously mean you would need to make a finding as a board if you're going to utilize this procurement method. So there would be the board would approve it. It would need to make a set of findings as to why this project would qualify under this definition. And it would allow you to procure a construction manager who would provide pre-construction at the design stage services, and then they could later on potentially be the contractor involved in seeing through the construction of the project, which, as you know, is not the typical method where you would have kind of a design consultant, construction manager, and then you would have your construction contract go out to bid. So I'll leave it to staff if they want to talk with you what this might potentially be used for, but it is worth noting this is something on the books now that you may or may not be able to utilize it for a future project. And it is for a limited period of time. It sunsets on January 1, 2031. So, you know, the next 5 years would be the time period you'd be looking at it. Again, limited to 15 capital outlay projects. I don't know that you would need 15 within 5 years, but that's what it allows for. So I'll take another quick moment here and make sure everyone's good and has no questions.
So this is only tied to recycled water projects.
Yes,
For now.
and to alleviate supply shortages, which, I mean, I can't imagine why you wouldn't have some findings you could make for a recycled water project, but yes.
We don't have any on our books coming that way.
Correct. The closest might be some type of project related to securing additional supply from Central Sand, but we need to complete the technical studies before we could see what those improvements would be and whether they would even be the types of projects where we want to utilize this.
Very good.
But it's there if you want to use it. Okay, SB 394, prohibiting water theft from hydrants. So there was already an existing rule in place that prohibits meter tampering and other forms of water theft. Fire hydrants could have fit under that, depending on how you draft your rules. But this sets out a whole separate provision because they have found that, at least in the state, there have been problems with kind of persistent abuse of, you know, fire hydrants to use for commercial purposes. And so they've got this new rule. It's very similar to the existing rules for what you can do to prohibit water theft. However, I will note, it says here you must adopt an ordinance and include a process for imposing, enforcing, collecting, an administrative review, which means like an appeals process for someone who would, you know, have this fine levied against them or a fee levied against them. But one thing worth noting here is the increasing fine structure with upper limits. The rule as regards other types of water theft, those first, second, third violations reset after a year. And because they were concerned with the importance of what's going on with fire hydrants, there's actually not that requirement. It's a cumulative without a 1 year reset. So if you have someone who's a repeat offender, then as you can see, the fines can get pretty severe if they repeatedly do that type of thing. So I thought that was worth noting.
Just had a quick,
Sure.
Jan, have we had that issue in our district?
So I figured you might ask that. So I looked to staff to talk a little bit about the.
We don't have lots of water theft. It generally kind of ticks up when there's a drought and we have other things going on, and it's not lots still, but it does occur through fire hydrants.
Okay. Thank you.
I have one more slide for you all, okay? So, AB 1096, you already must report, the district must report, provide annually a report about lead testing. You're supposed to list the number and names of schools and childcare facilities, those that were notified, those that sampled, and those that declined sampling, those that did not respond, and information pertaining to outreach attempts. That last part, or the next part, is you must now also provide a checklist. I did not give you the checklist on the screen, but it has I gave you an example. There are several reasons why a facility might decline, because they're covered under another program, or the facility was built after a point in time when lead isn't a concern. But the idea here is that you must now go that extra step and provide the schools and the child care facilities that decline with an opportunity to basically check the reason on the box. And also, now on or before December 31, 2028, you must include in your annual consumer confidence report a statement that information on lead testing is on the state board website, water board website, and must provide a direct link to that website in your report. So just a little bit more, to encourage information. And so really that's it for my part, and I will turn it over.
Well done. Thank you very much. Any final questions? Moving on. All right, Michelle. Grip it and rip it.
Thank you, Morgan. Good evening, President Halkett, members of the board. I'm Michelle Gallardo, Administrative Services Director. I'll be presenting to you this evening the Legislative Affairs Activities Briefing that we provide to you annually. I also just, before I get started, want to give special thanks to Sarah Tom, who helped put this presentation together. She's our management analyst supporting administrative services. Thank you. So this evening we'll cover the aspects of the legislative and regulatory advocacy policy. We'll cover some highlights of advocacy issues and interests that the district follows, as well as ongoing district legislative advocacy efforts. The district's legislative and regulatory advocacy policy has references to our memberships. We take part in a variety of professional organizations such as ACWA, CASA, CSDA that assist us in tracking legislative and regulatory issues. These organizations take positions on efforts and also form committees that we participate in. We also do our own tracking and take positions on a variety of local, regional, state, and federal legislation and regulations throughout the year. We are part of quite a few different membership organizations that provide advocacy as part of their charge. And so you can see here these different organizations, which again, we are participating at different levels on committees on these different organizations. We also work with our partner agencies, Zone 7 Water Agency, EBDA, Tri-Valley, and Bay Area Water and Wastewater Agencies to take part in coordinating, following what their legislative platforms are, and making sure that we are following any legislative activities that might be applicable to our business. And so looking at the highlights of what we pay attention to, stay in touch with, are primarily in these categories of our business: so water, wastewater treatment, recycled water, and then, as you heard earlier, legislative activities that affect special districts in general. And so as you can see, there's different areas of these two sections of our business, if you will. Everything from water conservation, water supply, water quality, PFAS, permits, environmental, biosolids, nutrients, security. These are all things that pertain to our core business services. And then, of course, for special districts, we follow general legislative activities related to public agency contracting, land use, employment and labor laws, safety laws, financial, and technology, local governance. Sorry. So, oops, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way. There we go. Okay, so in 2025, we followed a number of different activities, but I'll just give you some highlights on some of the ones we were tracking and or commented on. So in 2025, related to water, wastewater, recycled water, we were following Proposition 4 and AB SB 105 and 149 related to implementing the spending plan for bond 10B and environmental projects. We supported that effort. We also had supported SB 682, but that was vetoed. And then SB 454 was also vetoed. We were on a watch, and that had to do with PFAS Mitigation Fund. For government and special districts, as you heard earlier, SB 707 was signed into law. We did oppose unless amended, which they did amend some of it before they passed it. So we found that that was successful. AB 1594 is currently inactive. This has to do with air quality and advanced clean fleets. We did participate in a joint comment letter regarding that effort. And then AB 339 was in a watch position. This was also signed into law, and this affects local agencies regarding providing notice to recognize employee organizations for contracting out. We also had watch positions on AB 810, which is ineffective right now, regarding internet websites and email addresses. SB 598 was signed into law, and SB 827, which I believe you heard about earlier this evening. In 2026, we are following HR 1871, with the Water Conservation Rebate Tax Parity Act. This is in a watch position. This allows for tax subsidies related to water conservation efforts. So we're watching that. We also, with the Bay Delta plan, we are in support position for that. And then a couple federal funding. One, we are supporting appropriations for the Mocho Wellfield PFAS treatment plan. And then one we oppose, which is proposed spending reductions for water infrastructure assistance programs. We're also following SB 601. A few of these are at various stages within review. They were proposed last year, but they might be stalling out or lagging in their movement. So SB 601, we're in an opposed position. There's issues with the bill that we have concerns about, and that's still being watched. HR 1267 is a PFAS-related Water Systems Liability Protection Act bill, and we are in support. We continue to watch. This one's in the House currently. SB 496, Clean Fleets Regulation. Just found, actually today, this was returned back to the Senate on February 2nd. We are in support of this. And then AB 259, the open meetings, extending teleconference procedures to 2030, we're in support. HR 2766 is a Special Districts Fairness and Accessibility Act that we are also in support of. So with our ongoing legislative activities, advocacy, we do provide biweekly board communications updates, which we will often attach copies of our position letters in those updates. We continue to actively participate in the professional memberships and committees. We provide letters of support. We will join with others for letters of support or opposition or oppose unless amended sort of positions with our various organizations, and we monitor local agency legislative affairs activities as well. With that, I am happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Any board questions? Looking left, looking right. I think you're okay. You covered it so well. We're all right. Thank you. No action required here, I think. All right, we're going to move on to 8B. Receive draft 2026 regional and local wastewater cost of service study. Set public hearing for May 4th, 2026, and authorize Proposition 218 notice. No worries. There we go.
Get it set up. Okay. Good evening, President Halkett, members of the board. Tonight's presentation is the draft 2026 Regional and Local Wastewater Cost of Services Study. And we have with us Mr. Kevin Lawrenson. He is the project manager for HDR Engineering, and he'll be giving the presentation. Next slide. Okay. So on January 20th, well, actually, I should just give a little overview of the calendar of events. On January 20th was our first review of the draft study and proposed rates. And tonight's presentation is the second review of the draft study to give you an update of changes from the first draft. At conclusion of the presentation, we'll also be asking you to set a public hearing and authorize sending of a Proposition 218 notice. Kevin?
Thanks, Ken. Okay, so this is a presentation that's very similar to what you saw about 4 weeks ago, but with some minor adjustments. So just to recap, there are several financial pressures that utilities face, similar to, all of us. We have the revenue side of things where the district is approaching build out, which means that there's a reduction in capacity. Also means lower growth. Those are things on the revenue side. Expense side, there are several things that also put pressure on the district. One is the regulations. There was a lot of discussion here earlier about the PFAS. Probably is going to cost a lot of money. So there's that side of things, which is an increase in capital costs for you guys. Energy and supplies, particularly those were gas and electric and chemicals. So gas and electric was going up about 30% over the last 4 years. And then chemicals was going up 150%. Capital asset replacement, it never gets less expensive to build things. That's just the truth. We all experience personnel costs always increases. That's just the way it is. So those are the financial pressures. So just to kind of hit this one more time, this is our typical boilerplate little sign where we say revenue requirement, cost of service, and rate design. The revenue requirement is the overall adjustments that we're looking to make. The cost of service are the particular to the customer classes, and the rate revenue is how we're collecting those funds. Now, the changes that we've made since January 20th are only on the revenue requirement side. So to summarize those changes, we did some fine tuning a little bit since then, and one of the things that we did was funds offset the That's, you know. And additionally, we added some additional OPEB and pension costs in the later years in 2030, 2031 for both regional and local. So the result of those changes, as you can see on that next little table, is on the last year, that's now 4%, and last time it was 5%. So it's just a net reduction there. Similar chart to what we saw the last time. This is our revenue versus expenditures, with our expenditures being the bar and the revenue being the line. Again, the main changes last time were in FY 2030. That overall, it looks pretty similar to what we've seen before, with the exception of that 4% at that last year that was once 5%. So again, this is a similar table as we saw last time, and you can see that red box that represents the change since the last time. And again, that's the reduction from 5% to 4% for residential. Also for non-residential, same also, reducing from 5% to 4% that last year. All other years remaining the same. And the other non-residential, exactly the same situation, reducing that last year from 5% to 4%. So looking at your cash balances, your capital cash balances, the chart on the left, that represents what the cash balances looked like when the budget was passed. And so you can see that the bars represent the balance of cash, while the lines represent the minimum. The orange is the minimum, and the blue is the maximum, or the target, I should say, sorry, target. And then if you look on the right, you can see that, you know, there's some changes that happened there, and this is related to the changes that we did for this study. Okay, moving on to local. This chart also very similar to the one you saw last time, except for there was some probably imperceptible changes to the cost side of things for the OPEB and pension changes. And for local, since we didn't change any of the rates, this table is exactly the same as the last time. No changes here. Look at the cash, the capital, working capital. Again, on the left is the fund balances as it was passed during the budget, and then the one on the right represents what happens after we made the changes to the with the. Moving on to the combined looks. So, you know, repeat this again. Only changes were made here were to that last year. And so you can see that we have that 5.5, 5.1, 5.1, 4.4, and then that last year has reduced down to 3.7. And so for overall, we're looking at, you know, less than a $5 increase on a bi-monthly bill for single family. Looking at multifamily, same thing. The first 4 years are the same, 5.9, 5.2, 5.2, 4.5. And again, that last year has reduced due to the regional dropping from 4 to 5. So for multifamily on a living unit basis for bi-monthly, it's $3.59 for a bill or 2 months. Looking at non-residential, it's a little bit hard to put this into context because, you know, I had to kind of pick an average type customer. So this would be different for all the different types of customers with different strength levels and volumes. But ultimately, exactly the same last year's. And for this particular customer, you would look at, on average, it's about $9, difference on a bi-monthly basis for this customer. So how you compare to your neighboring agencies, you can see at the very top we have almost $1,300 for City of Berkeley, and at the very bottom we have Oralomo at 486, and there you are also very close to the bottom at $559 for an annual wastewater. So, kind of recap, we kicked off this project last October, and we did the bulk of our work between October and December, and then we came to you 4 weeks ago, 20th. Our second review. Authorized. After that, we look at April 27th, we have our written objections for AB 2257 are due. And then also for May 4th, we have our public hearing, and that's when protests are due up to 18. The rates go into effect. So next step, I'd like to hear anything you'd like to tell us or ask us, and we can set that public hearing hopefully, and then also authorize that proposition.
Excellent, thank you. Very concise. I have no blue cards. Nicole, any public comment?
No speaker cards.
Alrighty. Board members. I know you have something. You always have something.
Yeah, just a minor one. And I think we may have asked this before, but if not, I'll ask it just because I know it'll be a question at some point. On your rate comparison sheet, I know you say data as of December 29th, 2025. Do we know where some of the bottom 1/3 providers are at relative to their rate studies or last adjustments?
Well, I don't know that we know beyond the 25, 26 numbers. They could be in the middle of a rate study and we just don't know. And I know that, H.
Yeah.
Board minutes to.
I think the general manager has something.
I can add a little bit of insight. So Oraloma is in the process of they had adopted a couple years ago their 5-year schedule, so they're increasing rates. The city of Pleasanton incorporates our regional component. So if the board chooses to adopt new rates, they will increase. And then a number of these agencies kind of on that bottom portion that you asked about are looking at rate increases to address the new nutrient requirements. So those will be going up as well.
So realistically, although we bumped up from our after rate adjustment perspective, we may be near the bottom.
I would anticipate within a few years we'll be at or near the bottom. But I do want to mention to the board that there are two main factors that contribute to keeping DSRSD's wastewater rates low. One is our cogeneration system. We generate a lot of power that runs the wastewater treatment plant. And the other is DSRSD's biosolids operations. We don't off-haul, so it's pennies on the dollar compared to a number of these agencies. So those two factors really help to keep our rates at that level.
So when we look to potentially our cogen project, the rebuild of it or whatever.
Replacement.
Yeah, so is that going to be baked into this new number or?
It is. So what Kevin was referring to with the debt service that's included in the outer years of that 5-year rate schedule is the assumption that was in the capital plan that we would debt finance a portion of the cogeneration system. So that is included in this 5-year study or the 5-year proposed rate adjustments.
I guess the reason why I'm just kind of really bringing that to the surface is this is a pretty sound adjustment and it's holistic, looking at some of the other anticipated And even then, we're near the bottom.
Correct.
Thank you.
You have some built-in advantages. All right. Ed?
Well, thank you for the presentation. Being a business owner in the private sector, I would like to think that the district will continue to maximize their efficiency. Because that slide that shows the revenue with a surplus towards the end of the rate increases, of course, it's great to have a surplus, but if the surplus gets so big, it tends to create an atmosphere of a little bit too comfortable, and not to cast any aspersions on our workforce, because we have, I think, obviously from my previous 8 years on the board, one of the best public works employees group of people that I've ever been privileged to be around. But there's always room for improvement. So my comments are mainly directed at staff, at that just don't lose sight of the fact that we have an obligation to our ratepayers to be as efficient and keep our rates as low as possible without jeopardizing the financial stability of the district. And as long as we keep on doing that, as this presentation is showing, I'm great with that. But just so long as we don't lose track of that perspective.
Well said. Thank you. Anything on this side?
I'll agree with Ed that it's very good to be in a good financial position, but we do have to concern ourselves with what the public understands our reserves are and what those reserves are for. I don't think
very encouraging.
Just one comment. First of all, nice presentation. And looking through what was here in the packet, the postcard that's going to go out. One suggestion I would have is just the graph that you have there is just highlighting that, saying that we're kind of at the bottom. No, I know it's in there. No, but what I'm saying is there's also a lot of data in there too, so it can get easily lost. So when you see that, I mean, it's in there. Pretty much, historically always been on the lower side when you compare us to other agencies out there. So I think that is, it's in there, but there's also a lot of tables and everything else, right? So it's one of those things that just if we could really bring.
We can incorporate that comment.
All right. I'm glad you brought up the 218 notice. I have it up here right now. Keep that slide up too. What size? This sounds like an arcane question. What size paper is this thing going to get?
This is a double-sided 11 by 17 that's folded to an 8.5 by 11. Sorry, I'm trying to use the mic and then use my hands, and then folded it again. So it's five. It's essentially 5 by 7, and then it folds out.
So it's 11 by 17 paper. So
correct.
It's big enough to read.
Correct.
And I like this. This is one of our cleanest 218s I've seen in a long time. Whoever did the graphics did a good job. I have one suggestion. I don't know if it's dirty pool or not. We should probably put a second bar in for Pleasanton because they have to adopt our regional rates. And that'll leap them back over the top, that'll put them back over the top of us.
Jan, if you, I will take that one for you. They have not done so yet, so
But they're legally,
would-
they're
that
legally
would-
required to do so.
they are not legally required to do though. They could subsidize those rates through the city general fund if they chose to.
Of which we know they don't have a lot.
Which we know they don't have much of, but yes. All right, I'll withdraw that. The only other thing is on the actual 218 notice, it says DSRSD after rate increase, and here it's after adjustment. I would flop out increase for adjustment throughout that document. I know that's just weird semantics, but it's just.
I might just ask the board to consider having increase because it's a bit more transparent in terms of the wording. We've oftentimes used adjustment because, as you know, with wastewater rates, sometimes some rates go up and some go down, but in this case, all of the rates are increasing.
Okay, I'm not a marketing major or an English major. I'll defer. That's fine.
I would agree with that comment.
Which way?
What Jan said.
Increase is transparent.
Yes, being transparent. Yes. Thank
Fine.
you.
All right. All right. Just trying to be subtle there, guys. Not a big deal. All right. Any other board discussion? I'm over 2 on this one. Okay. Is there a motion to set the public hearing and authorize the Proposition 218 notice as presented in the packet, not edited by the president, notice under item 8B? I have a motion.
I'll second.
I have a second. Second, then a motion. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, 5-0. Well done. We're getting there. Okay, reports. Joint Powers Authority, 9A1, Joint Powers Authority and Committee reports. There are none. 9A2, submittal of written reports for days of service, events attended by directors, written reports. I will start on my left because I know Georgine has at least one.
And I can keep it very brief because the entire meeting seemed to. Oh, I'm sorry. See, the whole meeting was consumed with
Wow.
this. Other than that, we discussed the details of the dinner, which is March 19th. And
Excellent. Well done. Anything?
No, just the next meeting, I will be on work travel, so will not be attending.
you will be what?
I'll be out of town on work travel.
We'll have to review that at a later agenda.
Mr. Well?
Thank you.
Mr. Roy? Nothing. And I have nothing as well. So 9A2 is dispensed with. 9A3, request new agenda items. Anybody? I don't see anybody looking antsy. We're going to move on to that one.
Can I maybe, what does this mean? Can we have something? Did everybody get one?
Oh, yeah.
Director Von Heaterloop, I'm not sure what you're pointing to.
I'm sorry. We got a letter from the registrar of voters that said we're now registered as a confidential voter. What's that?
I can
Bring it next time.
Yeah, we can bring something next time, but I'll do the too long didn't read version of it.
Within the agenda.
There are, for public officials now, there is a special law that keeps your home address that you use for filing your paperwork for election private.
Oh.
So that is no longer contained. Yeah, so that is no longer contained within your public documents.
Thank you very much. We probably don't have to bring it forward then. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. All right, 9B, staff reports.
Over the last few months, the board may be aware that we've had quite a few earthquake tremors centered around the San Ramon area. And so we've gotten some questions on how staff responds. And I thought our operations director, Dan Gill, could talk a little bit about that.
Yes, my name is Dan Gill. I'm the operations director. I'm sorry, good evening, Director Halkett or President Halkett, members of the board. Yes, so we have experienced a number of earthquakes in the region, and as part of as part of the response, it depends on two factors: the magnitude of the earthquake and also the distance to our facilities. What I always tell our staff is that if you feel the ground shaking at the wastewater treatment plant or in the distribution system, you got to look over your system, do the basics, walk around the plant, do a physical inspection, and on the distribution side, the operators look over the SCADA system. If there are any alarms, loss of pressure, increased flow at any of the pumping plants, staff will investigate. And of course, the eyes and ears of our system will be the residents. Fortunately, we haven't seen any huge issues with the earthquakes, or we can't definitely say that the earthquakes have caused any main breaks in the system. And another thing we are working on is a SOP to kind of define criteria on what to do when we feel or can confirm a certain magnitude earthquake over a 4.0, for example, for a specified time limit, some criteria so that we can initiate a more formal inspection and have that information go to myself, the general manager, and possibly elsewhere, just so everyone knows we're doing something in response to earthquakes.
Cool. I got a small comment or question. So you say you walk around every time you feel the ground shake. So we had a swarm. There would have been somebody walking around constantly. And so I guess I'm just encouraging that threshold of what's considered sizable and real from a benchmark perspective, just to align expectations, not to dismiss, but because of the swarm frequency, it was like literally every minute, every other minute, or every 3 minutes, and then through the night, right? So just also a little bit of semi-reality. But, there was one that was 3.6 and then 4.2. Now, those two probably would have triggered some sort of deeper. And so just want to make sure from everyone else hearing.
Our standby generator regularly cycled and
So we do a monthly generator test, and every other month we put load on the generators to ensure that they could operate the wastewater treatment plant. Correct. Yep.
the reality is, unless it was the big one, people adapt here in the headquarters building. They'll keep it together. But if something goes down out there in that plant that breaks a valve or a major inflow or outflow line breaks, or a gas line is severed, you've got a plan for all that, for those types of rare emergencies, right?
Correct. We are well set up to respond to emergencies 24/7, 365 days a year. We have an emergency meeting that we conduct at the wastewater treatment plant every other month to kind of acknowledge that we have seen a lot of, the power outages, the fires, and also large main breaks. So we have a phone tree, response plan, and everything that's necessary to respond.
Well done. Well done. Anything else here? We have 9B1 and 9B2.
Yes,
which are written
I
reports.
was just going to share that there are staff reports in the packet. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. And then in terms of upcoming announcements, the LAVMA board meeting is tomorrow evening in this boardroom, and then the State of the City for Dublin is on February 24th, and all the board members that notified us that they were interested in attending have been signed up.
Can you work with LAVMA? I believe they're seeking responses to a future meeting. One of them happens to be conflicting with our board meeting. So I've notified the clerk in that regard, but have not heard back.
You can coordinate with LAVMA.
Bring that as a potential option tomorrow.
Well done. Thank you for the clarification. All right. I think we've milked this thing as far as we can today. There's no more business. I'm going to move to item 10. And this meeting is adjourned at 7:16.